you know, hoping somebody's going to come back, just to find out if they never do. It's pretty much modern day war. That's how it's going down. And kudos to the creator of this game. Because I always want to say Akira Toriyama, but that's the creator of Dragon Ball Z. I think it's Tetsuya Nomura. Could be wrong. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But Tetsuya Nomura created a great game. If you couldn't tell already. I've said though, it's not my favorite Final Fantasy. That has nothing to do with the story, it has nothing to do with the gameplay. I just prefer one over the other. And one that I prefer, like I said, is 4. But we're playing 7 right now, so don't worry about that. I love 7, just like I love pretty much every Final Fantasy. They're just saying, oh, but this Final Fantasy sucks. It's horrible, it's got bad gameplay, it's got bad graphics. Well, you know, fuck you. You're trying to compare a game that is not similar in any way, but the fact that it has the same name. Every Final Fantasy is its own game. Get over it. I hate hearing this shit. Oh, but you know, it'll never be as good as this Final Fantasy because it's not made like this Final Fantasy. You know what? They said, fuck you. So what you're doing is you're downing a good game because of the fact that it's not as good as the last one or your favorite. It's fucking stupid. It's fucking retarded. You're a fucking dumbass if you're doing that. Yeah, it's okay to compare games, but when the fact is, like Final Fantasy for instance, you know, one Final Fantasy is different from another. Different stories, different characters. Same concept, that's a lot of games have the same concept as Final Fantasy. But the fact is, you know, just because that concept is the same, you know, there's always a protagonist and antagonist. You're always going to be fighting the antagonist. At some point, he may not always be the final boss. But the stories are completely different. It's like trying to compare 2 animals in the world. Or no, that's a bad analogy. I'll think of an analogy, and when I do, I'll say it. I can't think of one right now. You know, okay. So take your 2 favorite movies. You know, 2 favorite movies from 2 different genres. It's trying to compare those 2 movies when they have nothing alike. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, I like the Avengers movies, I like the Fast and Furious movies, but trying to compare one of those, the Avengers movie to, you know, say the newest Fast and Furious, Fast 5, trying to compare those 2 movies is stupid because they're not the same. It's fucking retarded how some people are so ignorant to see that a game, or they're so ignorant to say that a game is not good because it's not as good as the last one that was made, if it's a so-called sequel, which by the way, Final Fantasy has had 1 prequel, there's a sequel to 4, which is not necessarily a sequel, it's just the later years of Cecil and Rose's child. But there's the sequel to 4, the prequel to 7, the movie of 7. There's a sequel to 10, which by the way, fuck you if you do not think it's a good game. You know, get over it if they're all girls. It's actually a pretty good game for sitting there and play it. By the way, I like 10 too. As in 10 the game and 10 part 2. So, kind of a little play on words right there. But that's besides the point. You know, they had a sequel to 10. There's a sequel to 13, and there's going to be another sequel to 13. And those, like, okay, you can't even compare those either. because it's not necessarily, when you think of a sequel is pretty much the same movie as the original. It's just a continuation of the story. Okay, take, what is it? I didn't play the sequel to 4, so okay, this is how we'll do it. We'll take 7, since I'm playing 7 at the moment. We'll take the movie Advent Children and the prequel Crisis Core. Crisis Core gave a story of Zack, which, if you did not know, it's complicated to explain it, but technically Cloud has Zack's memories in this game, and like I said, it's complicated to explain. It's really hard to explain without somebody actually playing through the game themselves. And even if you play through the game, you could still be a little bit confused about what's going on. But we're not going to go into that because we'll probably touch upon that at that point in the game. But that's besides the point. Okay, the prequel, I still can't fucking speak today, but the prequel gave insight on Zack to give a little bit of history. It also touched up on Sephiroth a little bit, showed Genesis. By the way, I think you fight Genesis at the end. It's been a really long time since I played Crisis Core. It's been like 4-5 years, somewhere around there, possibly 3.5. But don't worry about that. Forget that. That's relevant. So then you got 7, which 7 could technically be considered a sequel to Crisis Core if Crisis Core came first. It didn't, so it's not technically considered a sequel. It's just the original game. Then you got Advent Children. Even though Advent Children is a movie, it is considered a sequel because it is a continuation of the story. Now, I might not say, some sequels are worse than the original in the way that, I know I'm contradicting somewhat if I say, you can't technically contradict the game if it's not necessarily the same thing. But sequels can be compared in a way, because in sequels, you're kind of looking for that feeling of the original, but also everybody looks for something a little bit extra, as in a little more action if it's an action movie, or if it's a movie like Fast and Furious, you're looking for more cars, you're looking for different cars. I'm getting more interference with my mic because my phone is sitting right beside me. But like I said, Fast and Furious, you're looking for more cars, you're looking for faster cars, you're looking for nicer cars. They're adding more action to the Fast and Furious movies. They're adding more detail, more story depth. And but you can compare those in a way. Not completely like you would compare two things. But it could be compared in a way. A lot of people say, oh, the sequel is not as good as the original. I agree with that, in a way. In some cases I would disagree.